The whispering embers. The air tasted of a funeral pyre, a nauseating cocktail of charred timbers and something far more sinister. Daniel ducked under the stark barrier of police tape, its plastic sighing beneath his weathered boots. Underfoot, the remnants of his life whispered, shards of glass and the pulverized bones of his former haven. The scene mocked his memories. Twisted metal groaned in the breeze, the skeletal arms of furniture reaching in supplication. Where the roof had been, a jagged wound gaped open, exposing the ravaged interior to the cold indifference of the sky. The pulse-throbbing of emergency lights painted the scene in garish hues, a belated symphony hours after the fire's crescendo. It felt like a lifetime. Sparky, normally a canine cyclone of joyous energy, skulked beside him, tail tucked tight. The usual spark in his eyes had dulled, replaced by a clouded worry. A low, mournful rumble emanated from his chest, echoing the raw ache blooming in Daniel's own. He knelt, stroking the familiar softness of the dog's fur, seeking solace in the simple warmth. "Easy, boy," he rasped, his voice sandpapered by smoke and suppressed grief. But ease was a distant dream. He moved tentatively, his gaze sweeping across the wreckage, attempting to reconstruct the familiar blueprint of his home from the disfigured remains. The living room, once a vibrant hub of laughter and shared stories, was now a blackened scar. The kitchen, Lily's domain where the scent of her adventurous baking once reigned, bore no resemblance to the cheerful space he knew. His breath caught, a painful hiccup, as his eyes locked onto the mangled remains of what had been Lily's window. The glass, molten and grotesque, clung like weeping tears to the scorched frame. Here was Lily's room, where she had lived, loved, and dreamed. An irrational surge of hope propelled him forward. Maybe, just maybe. But what miraculous survival could there be amidst this devastation? He reached the window, his fingers trembling as they brushed against the warped metal. The heat had faded, but the inferno still raged in his mind's eye. He recalled Mrs. Henderson's frantic call, her voice a shriek of terror. He remembered the distant wail of sirens as he raced home, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. He remembered arriving to a house devoured by flames, reaching like ravenous demons toward the heavens. He sifted through the remnants of Lily's sanctuary, his eyes desperately searching for a sign, a beacon. A beloved toy, a trinket, a faded photograph, tangible proof she'd been here, that she. Then he saw it. A perfect rectangle of white nestled amidst the soot and ruin. Small, impossibly pristine, it seemed to glow faintly in the gloom. He pushed aside a charred beam, his heart a frantic bird in his chest. It was a Bible. Lily's Bible. He knelt, his hands shaking violently as he reached for it. The edges were singed, but the pages within appeared untouched by the fire's wrath. It lay open, face down, on a bed of ash. With agonizing slowness, he lifted the book. The pages whispered as he turned it, his eyes drawn to the revealed verse. From Psalms. "The Lord is close to the broken-hearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." She had posted this very verse to social media mere hours before. Just hours before she was due home. A wave of vertigo threatened to overwhelm him. He gripped the Bible, his knuckles bone-white. Was this a message? A sign? Could she? Sparky nudged his hand with a wet nose, offering a soft whimper of comfort. Daniel looked at the dog, his eyes brimming with tears. "She was here, Sparky," he whispered, his voice raw with emotion. "She was here." How it survived, why it survived, he couldn't fathom. But he needed to believe. He needed to believe Lily had made it home. That this verse, spared by the flames, was a promise, not a eulogy. He clutched the Bible to his chest, a paper-thin shield against the crushing despair. The whispering embers around him seemed to pulse with renewed vigor, as if acknowledging the rekindled spark within his soul. It was a fragile flame, vulnerable and small, but it burned. And he would protect it with every breath. He would find her. He had to. Sifting through shadows. The air tasted of ruin, a biting cocktail of charred remnants and stubborn smoke. Each inhale scraped Daniel's throat, a constant, raw reminder of the ravenous blaze that had stolen everything. He surveyed what remained of his home, a desolate tableau of ash and shattered memories, a stark monument to his profound loss. A beginning, however small, was demanded of him. He had to locate Lily. Stepping onto the blackened earth, his boots crunched through the debris field. He nudged aside a carbonized beam, still radiating a faint heat. Thus began his methodical excavation, a desperate quest through the wreckage of his former life. Those initial hours yielded only cinders and mangled metal. Scraps of furniture emerged, unrecognizable ghosts of a life now impossibly distant. A clock, frozen at 3:15, marked the approximate moment when calamity struck. Then, a spot of color pierced the monochrome. He knelt, his pulse quickening, and gently cleared the ash. A shard of sunshine-yellow plastic emerged. Instantly familiar. A piece of Lily's toy castle. He delved deeper, hands trembling now, unearthing fragments of her lost world, a doll's limb, a brightly hued block, a storybook page depicting a cheerful bear. Each discovery amplified her absence, a painful twist of grief in his gut. He paused, eyes drawn to the skeletal remains of the garden. He could almost conjure her there, small hands smudged with soil, coaxing sunflowers from the earth. He recalled the pure delight in her eyes as they outgrew her. He could almost hear her laughter, a phantom melody haunting his memory. Sparky, his fur singed and tail tucked low, nudged Daniel's hand with a damp nose, whimpering. Stroking the dog's head, Daniel found a small solace in the animal's quiet companionship. "I know, boy," he rasped, choked with emotion. "I miss her too." Shifting his focus, he headed toward the skeletal framework of what had been Lily's bedroom. Logic offered little hope, but he refused to surrender. The heat intensified as he neared the room's heart, the air shimmering with a heat haze that distorted the already surreal scene. Coughing, he shielded his face with his shirt. Then he spotted it. A piece of paper, miraculously spared annihilation. He lifted it gingerly, his fingers tracing the delicate, charred edges. It was a drawing, partially consumed, yet undeniably recognizable. A dragon. Lily had been enthralled by dragons. Notebooks overflowed with fantastical creatures boasting emerald scales and eyes of incandescent fire. Yet this one was different. This one smiled, its tail curling into a playful flourish. It was her happy dragon, reserved for moments of pure joy. He recalled the day of its creation. She had just conquered riding her bike unassisted, her face glowing with triumph. She had raced inside, seized her crayons, and birthed this very masterpiece. Daniel pressed the drawing to his chest, overwhelmed. It was a tangible piece of her essence, a whisper from the past. A sign, perhaps? He cast his gaze around at the desolation, the utter ruin. How could anything have survived this? Could she have survived? His fingers found the Bible, untouched, a stark contrast amidst the destruction. A specific verse surfaced in his mind, a promise of solace for the shattered. He pictured Lily's smile, her indomitable spirit. Hope, tenuous and fragile, began to flicker within him. A mere ember in the overwhelming darkness, yet it was enough. He would continue his search. He would keep digging. He would not yield until he found her. He clung to the belief that she remained out there, waiting. He glanced down at Sparky. "Come on, boy," he said, his voice regaining strength, imbued with renewed resolve. "Let's keep looking." Whispers of support. The reek of fire clung to Daniel, a persistent ghost of what was gone. Kneeling in the wreckage, Lily's drawing in hand, its cheerful hues mocked the bleak surroundings. A figure loomed, and he met Mrs. Peterson's gaze, her worry a tangible thing. "Daniel, dear," she began, her voice thick with unshed tears. She offered a foil-covered casserole. "Just a little something. We wanted to help, somehow." He summoned a watery smile, accepting the offering. "Thank you, Mrs. Peterson. That's genuinely kind." The yard's perimeter began to fill with neighbors, their faces reflecting a shared grief and anxiety. Mr. Johnson, his usual bluster muted, approached, bearing a box of sandwiches and water bottles. "Thought you might not have eaten," he mumbled, eyes averted. Didn't feel right, you being out here on empty. Daniel rose, a wave of gratitude washing over him. He'd been oblivious to his own hunger. I appreciate this, truly. Thank you. Then, one by one, neighbors murmured words of solace. They spoke of Lily, recalling anecdotes that painted a picture of a bright, empathetic child. Lily was such a little helper. Mrs. Peterson recalled, her eyes shimmering. Just last week, she insisted on carrying my groceries up the porch steps. Wouldn't take a dime. Said it was her good deed. She blotted her eyes with a tissue. Such a treasure. Mr. Johnson cleared his throat, his expression softening. Remember when Buster bolted? Lily found him by the creek. She stayed with him for hours until I got back, making sure he didn't wander off again. Even drew me a picture of him afterwards. Still got it tucked away. He paused, his voice faltering. She had a heart of gold, that one. A fresh surge of agony threatened to drown Daniel, each kindness a painful reminder of a life extinguished too soon. But cutting through the despair, a tiny ember flickered. These people knew Lily. They remembered her spirit, her generosity. Maybe, just maybe, someone had observed anything that could lead him to her. Did anyone see her? He pleaded, his voice cracking. Anything at all? An exchange of troubled glances rippled through the small crowd. No one's seen her since the start of the blaze. Came a hushed reply. The police are doing everything they can, Daniel. Another neighbor assured him, a comforting hand on his arm. They'll bring her home. Hollow promises. He needed more than that. He craved a sign, a thread, anything to cling to. As the afternoon waned, the neighbors persisted in their support. Some assisted in sifting through the charred remains, hunting for some trace of his daughter. Others procured blankets and lawn chairs, urging him to take a break. But Daniel was incapable of rest, unable to stop searching. He roamed the ruins of Lily's room, the air thick with the sharp tang of burnt timber and shards of memory. He discovered a singed corner of her cherished blanket, a small, porcelain doll missing a limb, and a melted mass that was once a box of crayons. Each object a sharp echo of her absence. Suddenly, a flash of silver caught his eye amidst the debris. He knelt, carefully brushing away the soot, revealing a small, silver locket. Recognition slammed into him, a 10th birthday present. Inside, miniature images of him and her mother. His fingers trembled as he sprung it open. The photos remained, miraculously untouched by the flame's fury. Clutching the locket tightly, a torrent of emotion surged through him. This was it, he thought, a beacon, a testament to Lily existing still, waiting to be rescued. He rose, determination renewed. He would not falter. He would scour every corner of creation until he held his daughter again. He scanned the faces of his neighbors, their eyes pools of worry and compassion. He was not alone, he realized. He had their support, their prayers, their unwavering faith in Lily's return. And that, he understood, was enough to propel him forward, for now. He inhaled deeply, the smoky air assaulting his lungs. Thank you, he managed, his voice stronger now. Thank you all for being here. I don't know what I'd do without you. He surveyed the ravaged landscape, the sinking sun painting long, ominous shadows. I'm going to find her, he declared, conviction ringing in his tone. I promise you, I will find Lily. The firefighter's warning. The biting tang of smoke permeated everything, scratching at Daniel's throat like fine grit. A strangled cough escaped him as he neared the yellow tape, a flimsy barrier against the devastation that had been his home. Ben Carter, his face masked with grime, stood sentinel. Daniel, he greeted, his voice a low rasp. A silent nod was all Daniel could manage, his gaze riveted to the scorched skeleton of the house. Twisted girders and blackened timbers formed a grotesque monument against the leaden sky. I'm going in. Ben shifted, blocking his path. You can't. It's too precarious. I have to find her. The words tore from Daniel, raw and ragged. Ben's hand settled on his shoulder, a firm, grounding pressure. Daniel, listen. We've searched thoroughly. Twice. There's nothing. The sentence fractured, the unspoken horror hanging between them. Don't, Daniel spat, shaking off the touch. Don't even say it. She's in there. I know it. He gripped the locket nestled in his pocket, the cool silver a meager solace against the inferno in his chest. Ben sighed, dragging a hand through hair stiff with soot. Daniel, I understand the urge, the need. But you're not thinking rationally. This structure is on the verge of collapse. Any tremor, any shift, and it could all bury you. And the crew who'd have to dig you out. I'll be careful. Daniel pleaded, his voice cracking. Just let me look. A few minutes, Ben, please. He saw the immutable set of Ben's jaw, the unspoken verdict. What haven't you told me? A flicker of pain softened Ben's gaze. Daniel, we found indications. Near Lily's room. It's irrefutable. A gasp hitched in Daniel's throat, and the world swam. He reached for the police barrier, his knuckles white. No, he whispered, the denial barely audible. It can't be. I'm sorry, Daniel, Ben said, his voice thick with empathy. Truly. We delayed telling you, clinging to the hope, the impossible. But it's time. Accept what? Daniel's voice rose, sharp with defiance. Accept that my daughter is just gone. That I should just accept that. I will never accept that while there's even a sliver of hope. He surged past Ben, ignoring the firefighter's outstretched hand. Daniel, wait. Ben's voice was laced with urgency. Don't do this. Daniel pressed onward, clambering over the debris field. Embers glowed, radiating heat that seared his skin. Smoke billowed, stinging his eyes. The air was a miasma of burnt synthetics and wood, a suffocating testament to destruction. Lily! He called, his voice shredded. Lily, can you hear me? Only the snapping fire and the wind's mournful sigh answered. He stumbled, heart hammering against his ribs. Fragments of a life lay scattered, a shard of ceramic, once Lily's beloved mug, a molten toy soldier, a ghost of childhood games. Each discovery was a fresh wound, a tangible reminder of his loss. He reached the remains of the living room, now a tomb of collapsed roofing and shattered possessions. He began to claw at the debris, his hands scraped raw. He hurled aside blackened planks, his movements bordering on frenzy. Lily! He screamed, voice cracking with despair. Ben materialized behind him, his face a canvas of concern. He didn't attempt to restrain him this time, but simply stood watch, a silent guardian against the backdrop of ruin. Daniel! He murmured, his voice barely audible above the crackling flames. Please! It's time to stop. Daniel ignored him, driven by an unseen force. He had to unearth her. Giving up was unthinkable. The memory of Lily's radiant smile, the phantom sensation of her small hand in his, fueled his desperate resolve. Surrender wasn't an option. She's here. He choked, tears streaming down his soot-streaked face. I know she's here. Unwavering hope. The calendar pages turned unseen, each dawn casting a jaundiced light across the charred skeleton of what was once his home. Daniel navigated the debris field, a wraith in ash-dusted clothes, his hands perpetually abraded. Sleep was a battlefield of acrid memories and phantom sirens. Ben pleaded with him to rest, to nourish himself, to simply acknowledge the relentless march of time, but Daniel was consumed, driven by a singular, unwavering purpose. He'd rigged a sieve from wire mesh and salvage lumber, meticulously sorting through the wreckage, handful by agonizing handful. Each glint of glass, each mangled metal fragment, each carbonized splinter underwent scrutiny, fueled by a desperate yearning for proof that Lily had somehow survived. One oppressively hot afternoon, he collapsed against the scorched upright, his body screaming in protest, his resolve wavering. His mouth felt like sandpaper, his eyes burned. Closing them, he momentarily escaped the present inferno, finding himself transported to a sun-drenched afternoon in their backyard. Lily's peal of laughter, bright as wind chimes, echoed in his mind, banishing the shadows. He saw her, a halo of gold curls framing a face alight with mischief, pursuing butterflies through a verdant meadow. She pirouetted, her expression radiant, and flashed that familiar, gap-toothed grin that never failed to disarm him. "Daddy, look!" she'd called, her voice ringing with joyful clarity. Then, the phantom scent of burning wood choked the air, the joyous sound dissolved, and he was hurled back into the desolate reality, the dream a cruel mockery of what he had lost. He snapped his eyes open, tears carving clean paths down his soot-covered cheeks. A primal scream clawed at his throat, a furious indictment of the injustice, but he remained mute. He could only resume his search. With a Herculean effort, he hauled himself upright, each movement a testament to his physical anguish. Grasping the sifter, his hands trembled, a mixture of exhaustion and renewed resolve warring within him. He had to persist. He owed her that much. Hours later, as the sinking sun painted the landscape in long, macabre strokes, his fingers encountered something smooth and cool, nestled deep within the ash. He gingerly unearthed it, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. It was a small, heart-shaped stone, its surface buffed to a soft sheen and adorned with a faded blue forget-me-not. Recognition flared instantly. Lily had presented it to him for Father's Day 2 years prior. Gathered from the river's edge, painstakingly painted, offered with hesitant pride. It had been his constant companion since, nestled in his pocket, a tangible echo of her affection. He cradled the stone, his thumb tracing the faint outline of the flower. An insignificant trinket, easily dismissed. Yet, to him, it was a beacon cutting through the overwhelming murk. It confirmed her presence here, in this very spot. Perhaps, against all odds, she was still out there, waiting to be found. Ben arrived then, his features creased with worry. He noticed the stone clutched in Daniel's hand, his shoulders slumped, his eyes focused on some distant point. He remained silent, a watchful guardian, bracing himself for the expected surge of anguish. "I found this," Daniel croaked, his voice raspy, barely audible. He extended his hand, offering the stone to Ben. Ben accepted it, turning it over in his callous fingers. He registered the worn paint, the softened edges, the profound significance it held. He understood what it represented for Daniel, a reason to persevere, a fragile chord in a sea of despair. "It's a sign, Ben," Daniel declared, his voice gaining a fragile strength, a spark of hope flickering in his gaze. "She's alive. I know it." Ben regarded his friend, the raw, desperate hope blazing in his eyes, and felt a wave of remorse wash over him. He longed to divulge the crushing truth, to spare him further torment, but he couldn't bring himself to extinguish that delicate flame. He knew that stripping that away would leave Daniel utterly bereft. "Maybe you're right, Dan," Ben murmured, returning the stone. "Maybe you're right. It was a compassionate falsehood, born of affection and a desperate desire to shield his friend from the inevitable devastation. He could only hope, pray, that Daniel wouldn't be completely shattered when that hope was finally snuffed out. The untouched word. The biting odor permeated everything, a stark memorial to all that had vanished. Daniel choked, hiking the bandana higher. Methodically, he sifted through the remnants of Lily's room, a space shrunk by devastation, a charcoal sketch of its former self. A fragment of her beloved butterfly teacup surfaced, then the congealed remains of her paints, a vibrant spectrum now a fused, unrecognizable mass. Each find was a pinprick, a fresh wave of sorrow threatening to drown him. The shovel struck something solid. Kneeling, the gritty ash swallowing his knees, he gingerly cleared away the debris with gloved hands, a slow, agonizing excavation. He dreaded what he might unearth, yet ached for any tangible trace. Then, a rectangle emerged from the gray, a darker patch amidst the desolation. Further brushing revealed a navy cover. His pulse quickened. Lily's Bible. He knew the simple embossed cross instantly. It was her constant companion, a gift from childhood, always on her nightstand. Trembling, he lifted it. Surprisingly weighty, it was caked in grime. He held his breath, carefully wiping it clean with his glove's edge. Soot billowed around him, a miniature storm in the already suffocating air. As he cleaned, a section of pristine navy emerged, untouched by the inferno. It was miraculously preserved, almost blessed. A surge of hope threatened to buckle his knees. He stumbled, catching himself on a charred table leg, his breath hitching in his chest. He had to open it. His thumb traced the edge of the fused pages, locating a gap. The paper felt stiff, faintly moist, but remarkably whole. Carefully, he pried them apart. It fell open toward the back. He recognized the handwriting instantly, Lily's youthful, looping script. She'd underlined a verse and scribbled a date. John 14 verse 27 Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid. Beneath it, my verse for today. Feeling anxious about the future, but God's got this. Vision blurring, tears carved clean rivulets through the soot on his cheeks. The familiar script, her very words, sparked a profound tranquility, an unwavering conviction that she was, somehow, all right. He recalled Lily posting that very verse online hours before. Why would her Bible be open to this verse? This was a clear sign she had made it home. He clutched the Bible, knuckles bone white. The rough cover pressed against his skin, a tangible link to his daughter, to his faith, to his enduring hope. Grounded by its weight, the verse resonated within his very being. He closed his eyes, and a nascent warmth flickered to life, a fragile spark against the overwhelming darkness. Hope. Opening his eyes, he focused on the horizon. The sky was a canvas of bruised purple, edged with the sun's fiery farewell. The road ahead would be long, fraught with pain and uncertainty. But he was not alone. He had his faith, the enduring echo of Lily's love, and the unblemished Word of God as his compass. He would find her. He had to. A verse of refuge. The flashlight's beam jittered across the scorched tableau that had been Lily's desk. Books, once a proud collection, were now a fused, brittle mass. He brushed trembling fingers over the warped remains of a picture frame, Lily's smiling image a faded echo in the desolation. Then, a beacon, her Bible. Perversely untouched, it lay open. His pulse quickened, each throb a desperate prayer as he reached for it. The page leapt out at him, Psalm 46 verse 1. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. The words shimmered, blurred by approaching tears. Highlighted, the yellow ink blazed like a sunbeam in the gloom. A memory surfaced, Lily posting it on Instagram hours before the disaster. His fingers, clumsy with shock, fumbled with his phone, ignoring the spider-webbed screen and the pleading battery icon. Scrolling through a torrent of condolences, he found it, Lily's last post, a simple sunset, graced with the same verse. Vertigo threatened. He braced himself against the ravaged wall, rough brick biting his skin. The timing, it had to mean something. She'd shared it. Then. He gripped the book. Refuge. The word vibrated within him, a deep, resonant note. Had she found sanctuary? A sob tore from him, a guttural sound ripped from the raw wound of his grief. Ben thought he was chasing shadows. But this felt different, tangible. He conjured Lily, her radiant smile, her unwavering spirit. He recalled her telling him about the verse, a balm during a tough time at school. It reminds me I'm never alone, Dad. Now, amidst this unimaginable wreckage, it offered a fragile hope, a lifeline tossed in a furious sea. Not proof, he knew, but something. A sign, a whisper from Lily, that she was safe, that she'd reached her haven. He closed his eyes, drawing a deep breath, striving to quell the frantic hammering of his heart. Clarity was paramount. If she'd escaped, where could she have gone? Who would she have sought out? His eyes snapped open, hardening with resolve. He would follow her digital footprint, retrace her steps. He would leave no stone unturned, no hospital unvisited, no shelter overlooked. He would find her. He returned the Bible to the desk, its pages radiating a faint light in the oppressive darkness, a promise sworn amidst the ruins. Stepping back, his footsteps echoed in the stillness. The night air knifed at his skin, but he barely noticed. A surge of energy coursed through him, a renewed sense of purpose ignited. Ben waited by the truck, his face etched with worry. Daniel? What did you find? Daniel turned, a fierce light blazing in his eyes. She's alive, Ben, he rasped, his voice raw with emotion. I know it. She's alive. I found her verse. Ben's brow furrowed, a hesitant hope warring with his apprehension. Her verse? Daniel nodded, clutching the flashlight tighter. Psalm 46 verse 1. She posted it right before. She was here, Ben. I know she was. Ben paused, his gaze shifting between Daniel and the Inferno's aftermath. The seasoned firefighter in him, familiar with loss, preached caution. Daniel, he began gently, try not to set yourself up for disappointment. We have to be pragmatic. Pragmatic? Daniel's voice cracked. How can I be pragmatic when my daughter is out there? I have to believe, Ben. I have to. He pivoted, his gaze fixed on the horizon, the city lights a distant promise. He wouldn't be swayed. He wouldn't be deterred. He would find Lily. A verse was his compass. The cabin in the woods. The reek of fire lingered, a ghostly echo of the inferno that had consumed everything. Daniel sank to his knees beside the charred remains of Lily's desk, the Bible a shield against his heart. Psalm 46 verse 1. God is our strength. The verse resonated, a fragile buoy in a turbulent sea. A sanctuary? Where could she have found one? His gaze rose to the smoke-tinged window. The forest. She'd always been captivated by the woods. A memory flickered to life. Lily, a child of 8, her eyes sparkling as he spun yarns of his boyhood escapades around his grandmother's old mountain dwelling. A forgotten haven. That cabin. It was more than just 4 walls and a roof. It was an emblem of solace, etched deep within their family lore. Lily's youthful fascination had been relentless, a barrage of queries about the creatures, the trails, the hidden cascades. He'd promised a visit, a pledge life had repeatedly shelved. Now, it wasn't simply a chance. It was a purpose taking root. A particular conversation surfaced, now laden with meaning. Dad, where is it, really? She'd pressed, her small brow furrowed. It's a trek, sweetheart, he'd answered, gesturing vaguely north. High in the mountains, beyond Blackwood Creek. But exactly where? She persisted, her resolve unwavering. He chuckled, tousling her hair. Someday I'll take you. Your great-grandma even sketched a map once. Probably stashed somewhere. A map. He lurched to his feet, the Bible nearly tumbling from his grasp. He recalled now. Lily, with her insatiable curiosity, had been desperate to see that map. He'd dismissed it as lost, not wanting her to attempt a solo expedition. But Lily possessed a knack for unearthing secrets. He reopened the Bible, fingers trembling uncontrollably. She used to hide treasures. Tiny missives, pressed blossoms, a feather pilfered from a nature ramble. Her private repository. He began with Genesis, gingerly leafing through the delicate pages. Nothing revealed. He progressed to Exodus, then Leviticus. His pulse hammered, a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Numbers, Deuteronomy, still barren. Doubt began to seep in, an icy tendril entwining his hope. He was about to succumb, to write it off as another delusion born of grief, when he arrived at the Psalms. He hesitated at Psalm 46, his fingers tracing the familiar scripture. And then he noticed it. Nestled behind the page, almost imperceptibly, was a folded scrap of paper. His breath caught. He gingerly retrieved it, his shaking hands threatening to tear it. The edges were scorched, stained with soot, but undeniably a map. A childlike rendering of meandering paths, labeled with peculiar landmarks known only to Lily. Giant whispering oak, squirrels crossing, glimmering brook. And at the top, rendered in crayon, a miniature cabin, smoke spiraling from its chimney. Hope surged, a powerful current sweeping away the despair. Frail, perhaps, but fiercely alive. She knew. She knew the cabin's secret location. She remembered. and perhaps, against all odds, she had sought refuge there. He swiped a hand across his face, smearing soot across his forehead. He had to go. He had to find her. Ben. He needed to tell Ben. Yet a part of him stalled. Ben would try to bring him back down, to inject a dose of unwelcome reality. He needed this belief, needed to cling to this gossamer thread. He would tell Ben. But not yet. Not until he solidified his thoughts, forged a concrete plan. He wouldn't allow anyone, not even his closest friend, to snuff out this fragile ember. He examined the map, tracing the whimsical landmarks. The cabin in the woods. Lily's haven. And now, his destination. A journey of hope. The aged map, etched with time, sprawled across the worn seat beside him. Daniel traced the faded routes with a rough finger, a lump forming in his throat. Decades had passed since last he'd seen this relic. It had to be Lily, only she would have unearthed it from his forgotten belongings. A surge of warmth, surprising and potent, pierced the icy despair that had become his shadow. Resourceful Lily, forever drawn to the unknown. The pieces clicked. Revived purpose banished the inertia that had gripped him since the blaze. In the garage, a haven of gasoline fumes and wood shavings, he sifted through gear. He grabbed a canvas backpack, its fabric softened by use but undeniably reliable, and thoughtfully packed essentials: a first aid kit, a powerful flashlight bolstered with spare cells, a versatile multi-tool, a couple of protein bars, and a thermos filled with yesterday's lukewarm brew. He added a thick wool blanket, recalling Lily's perpetual chill. He hesitated, hovering over a framed photo on the workbench. 10-year-old Lily, caught mid-mischief, her face dusted with flour after a cookie-baking escapade. He lifted it, his throat constricting. "I'm coming, Lilybug," he rasped, pressing a kiss to the glass before cradling the picture within the blanket's folds. Sparky, who'd been a silent, watchful presence in the corner, suddenly vibrated with alertness, his tail drumming a rapid tattoo against the concrete. A soft whine escaped him, his head cocked as if sensing the shift in Daniel's spirit. Kneeling, Daniel scratched behind Sparky's floppy ears. "We're heading out, boy. A long haul." Sparky erupted in joyful barks, leaping and twirling, tongue lolling. The heavy shroud of grief, palpable and suffocating, had lifted, replaced by a nascent spark that even Sparky recognized. Daniel released the Jeep's rear door. With instant comprehension, Sparky bounded in, landing with a muted thump. He circled once, nosing the worn interior, then settled, his gaze locked on Daniel. As Daniel slid into the driver's seat, the engine coughed to life, a familiar grumble that once soothed him. Tonight, it roared defiance. He cast a final glance at the map, imprinting the course in his mind. The cabin, tucked deep within the embrace of the Blue Ridge Mountains, stood in a place he hadn't visited in decades. He steered from the driveway, abandoning the skeletal remains of his former home, the epicenter of his loss. No backward glances. The road beckoned, his headlights slicing through the pre-dawn gloom. Only the dashboard glow and the intermittent flash of passing cars pierced the darkness. The highway yielded to a network of twisting backroads, their surfaces scarred and uneven. A chilled draft entered, scented with pine needles and damp earth. The landscape dissolved into a tapestry of shadows, the trees standing like solemn guardians. He drove in silence, broken only by the engine's thrum and Sparky's occasional sigh of contentment. His mind raced, a turbulent vortex of anticipation and dread. What if she wasn't there? Could the map be a cruel jest of fate? He wrestled the doubts down, clinging to the image of Lily's bright smile, the echo of her carefree laughter. He had to believe. It was the least he could give. The hours dissolved into a relentless marathon of driving. The coffee had turned acrid and cold, but he sipped it anyway, finding a strange solace in the bitterness. He checked the fuel gauge, noting the dwindling supply. A pit stop loomed, but he resisted the idea of losing ground. At long last, he found the turnoff, a barely discernible scar of a dirt track leading into the woods. He geared the Jeep down, engaging four-wheel drive. The track was a brutal gauntlet of ruts and loose stones. The Cherokee bucked and swayed, putting his driving skills to the test. Sparky whimpered, nudging Daniel's shoulder, seeking reassurance. Daniel stroked his velvety ears. Nearly there, boy. Almost home. The trees pressed closer, amplifying the darkness. He heard the whisper of leaves, the mournful hoot of a distant owl. A primal fear began to gnaw at him, but he stifled it. He had to maintain his focus. He had to stand his ground. Then, through the dense foliage, a beacon, a faint shimmer. A lone light pulsed from a small clearing. His heart hammered against his ribs. The cabin. Safe in Grand's arms. The final stretch had been a gauntlet of frayed nerves. Each whisper of wind, each crunch underfoot threatened to pop the fragile balloon of optimism he clung to. At last, the cabin materialized, stark against the dimming sky. No plume of smoke graced the chimney, no welcoming glow emanated from within. The woods stood hushed, as if anticipating the impact of his arrival. Sparky offered a soft whine, nudging Daniel's hand with a cold, damp nose. "Steady, boy," Daniel rasped, throat tight. He forced his hands open, seeking composure. He needed clarity, preparation for any eventuality. He'd shielded himself from truly envisioning this reunion, dreading the potential for soul-crushing disappointment. But now, poised at the doorstep, he couldn't quell the frantic drumbeat in his chest. He reached for the roughly hewn door, the wood clammy against his skin. He faltered. What if she wasn't there? What if he was pursuing a phantom, a figment conjured from anguish and desperation? He squeezed his eyes shut, the mental snapshot of Lily's radiant smile searing itself into his mind. Reopening them, his gaze hardened with resolve. He had to ascertain the truth. Drawing a fortifying breath, he pushed the door inward. The hinges shrieked in protest, the sound amplified by the stillness of the haven. The interior lay shrouded in gloom, feebly illuminated by the dying embers in the hearth. Dust motes pirouetted in the air, stirred by his entry. And then he saw her. Lily. She was asleep on the settee, nestled under a patchwork quilt. Her hair, normally a wild, joyous tangle, framed her face. A drawing was clutched possessively to her chest. Even in the low light, he discerned the familiar hues of the phoenix she'd been creating before the devastation. A dizzying wave engulfed him, so powerful that he grasped the doorframe for purchase. An overwhelming sense of liberation, almost unbearable in its intensity, surged through him, banishing the long-lingering despair. His legs unsteady, he lurched forward. "Lily?" he breathed, his voice thick with emotion. She stirred, eyelids fluttering. Momentarily, she appeared disoriented, adrift. Then her gaze locked onto his, recognition dawning. "Daddy?" The word was a mere breath, a soft, questioning sound. But it sufficed. Lily shot upright, casting aside the quilt. The drawing slipped to the floor, forgotten in her haste. She catapulted herself towards him, her small form colliding with his. "Daddy! You came for me!" He enveloped her in his arms, holding her close, burying his face in the fragrant wilderness of her hair. The mingled scents of wood smoke and lavender swirled around him, achingly familiar. He felt the frantic thrum of her heart against his ribs, the tremor of her slight frame. She was tangible. She was safe. "Lily, oh Lily!" he stammered, words failing him. Tears coursed down his cheeks, scalding and silent. He clutched her tighter, afraid to release his grip, terrified she might vanish. "I knew you would," she murmured, her voice muffled against his shirt. "I just knew it." He eased back slightly, cradling her face in his palms. "Are you all right? Were you hurt?" She shook her head, eyes shining with unshed tears. "I'm fine, Daddy. Gran looked after me." As if summoned, a figure stepped from the shadows of the rear room. Martha. Worry lines were deeply etched on her face, yet her eyes sparkled with uncontainable relief. "Daniel," she uttered, her voice trembling. "Thank heaven you're here." He released Lily and turned to his mother, his heart brimming with gratitude. "Mom, how?" "She's been secure here with me," Martha replied, her gaze fixed lovingly on Lily. The fire! It was a horrifying event. But she remembered the verse. Verse? Daniel asked, puzzled. Lily detached herself and retrieved the drawing from the floor. She displayed it to him, pointing to the calligraphy at the bottom. See, Daddy? When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned, the flames will not set you ablaze. Isaiah 43 verse 2. Gran said it would protect me. She told me to come here. Daniel stared at the artwork, at the well-known passage. The very verse Lily had shared online mere hours before the conflagration. The verse he had dismissed as mere coincidence, a desperate grasp for solace. But now he recognized its true significance. A lifeline thrown to him. A beacon of hope in the pitch black. He looked from his daughter to his mother, to the modest sanctuary that had sheltered them both. And he understood, with a certainty that resonated through his very core, that his rescue extended beyond Lily. He had rediscovered his faith. He had reclaimed his family. He had finally found his way back.